Hello and welcome to our online presentation of our high school network meeting. Thank you for joining us online. My name's Helen and I will be taking you through our network meeting today, and I'm joined by my colleague Tammy, so you will hear her voice as well, guiding us through our session today. So today we will be looking at a Carers Trust report that came out in the autumn 2024, which looks into the attendance and attainment of young carers. It's called Caring in Classes, the Education Gap for Young Carers. We've recently updated our schools awards, so we'll go through some of those new changes. We'll talk about our Young Carer Ambassador programme and our Be Your Own Best Friend course. Okay, so what is a young carer? A young carer is a young person who is caring for or emotionally affected by a family member who has a physical or mental illness, disability, or misuses drugs or alcohol. And a sibling young carer is defined as a young person who is affected by a brother or sister's disability, illness, or additional need. And here we have some quotes from some young carers that we support. It's just me and mum at home. Carers come in twice a day, but the rest of the time it's me. I love helping mum, but sometimes I just feel it's too much. I had never heard of young carers until someone told me I was one. I didn't know my life was different to others. Sometimes my sister is violent towards me. I know it isn't her fault, but it still scares me. By learning how to take care of mum, I'm also learning how to take care of myself. So these are just a few quotes from our young carers, which really shows what young carers go through and the support they need. So now I'll hand over to my colleague Tammy as she discusses the statistics of young carers here in Suffolk.
Hi everyone. So as you can see on the current screen, the registrations that we received in the year 2023 to 2024 were 846. So 19% of these came from the under seven age category, 44% came from the ages 8 to the 11 years, and that's where the majority of our referrals come from in that age bracket. And then, as you can see, 28% from the 12 to 16 year age group and 6% from the 16 plus. Research indicates that 1 in 5 high school age pupils are young carers. And as you can see, the majority, as you can see from the pie chart, the majority of the referrals are coming from education settings at 48.9%, with the runner-up of where the referrals are coming from is health at 26.7%. Also, there are 56% of registrations were from females and 42% from males. The remainder either preferred not to say or chose not to give a response.
Okay, so now we're going to look at the Carers Trust report that came out in September 2024. So the Carers Trust is a charity, a national-wide charity that supports carers and young carers across the board and across the country. So this report was research that they have carried out, and it sets out the state of young carers, educational and attainment and opportunities in England in 2024. Almost 600 young carers informed the research, along with parents, schools, colleges, young carer services and local authorities, with the addition of 24,993 pupils and 8,231 teachers across England also participating in the research. So as you can see, it was a pretty big research project for Carers Trust to take part to do. Following the report, there are 3 main concerns, which you can see there on the screen. 1, caring has a significant negative impact on education. 2, awareness, identification and recording of young carers in educational settings is still too low. And 3, support for young carers in education is worryingly inconsistent. As a whole, the report found 8 key findings and made 14 recommendations. But don't worry, we won't be going through all of them today. But if you are keen to have a look at the report yourself, just go to the Carers Trust website and you'll find it on there. So, the key findings. In 2022 to 2023, young carers missed an average on average more than a month of their education. So that's 23 school days compared to 14 days for other pupils. Almost half, 46% of young carers at secondary school in England were persistently absent in 2022-23. This means that they missed at least 10% of the school. That's one day in every fortnight. And almost a third of young carers, 30%, are regularly late for school because of the demands of their caring situation. So I think we can agree that these numbers are high. And for some, it might be a bit shocking to see that young carers are actually missing that much school. But now maybe take a time to think about your own setting, maybe get a pen and paper and have a little think. What are things like in your school? And are you aware of young carer specific absence or lateness? And do you see a correlation between absence and young carers? Just have a little think and maybe write down some notes. The report shows us that overall absence rate is 12.3 for young carers and 7.3 for those not recorded as being a young carer, which is a massive difference. And as such, we can see that this alone would then have an effect on the attainment of young carers. If they're not in school, they're not going to be learning and they're not going to be achieving what they potentially could be. Key findings continuing. So the Carers Trust report says, as of September 2024, it is mandatory for schools in England to share their daily attendance data with the Department of Education. However, young carers is not currently included as a specified group for the daily attendance recording, yet the absence data that is shown here from the report from 2022 to 2023 for young carers shows us that for young carers it's higher than for those specified groups of other pupils who are considered disadvantaged. So as you can see, for those that are declared as a young carer, it is 12% absence rate, 39% persistently absent, which is massive. And then those pupils that are eligible for school meals, as you can see, 11.1% absence, and then 36.5% for persistently absent. And then again, for those on an ECHP, 12.3%, 36%, and then those receiving SEN support, 10.2% and 31.1%. So as you can see, on all accounts, young carers have more absence, but yet the Department of Education is not wanting to hear those figures from schools daily. Again, just time to just have a little bit of a think to yourself. Sometimes we describe young carers as being a hidden vulnerable group because they aren't included in the absence rate, things like that. What are your thoughts on this? Would you say that young carers are hidden in your setting? So the stats we've just seen show that they are the highest absence rate, but it's not even seemed worth recording on for the Department of Education, which does seem a bit shocking. So we're hoping, and Carers Trust are hoping, that this report will make a change to this and will make the Department of Education see that to make changes to support young carers properly, things like recording the absence rate is really important. This key finding is looking at attainment. So as you can imagine, there's definitely an impact from absence and persistent absence to attainment. As you can see from the table, young carers are quite a disadvantage academically because of their caring responsibilities, and there is quite a gap between the two groups. So we can see from the chart that Key Stage 2 attainment measure is reach and age-related expectations in reading, young carers 51%, non-young carers 70%. That's quite a massive gap. To reach the age-related expectation in writing, young carers 39%, non-young carers 63%, and to reach an age-related expectation in maths, 49% to 73%. Now, so this is a gap in each thing, reading, writing and maths. There's a massive percentage gap between what young carers are able to achieve to what non-young carers are able to achieve. The report also shows us that data for YACs, the young adult carers, so those over 16, also show us that they are 37% less likely than applicants without a caring role to achieve A-star AA or above at A level, and YACs are 25% less likely than applicants without a caring role to achieve AAB or above. So absence, as you can imagine, also has a knock-on effect with homework and revision, and so does having a caring role. So the report tells us that 45% of young carers told the survey that they would frequently struggle to study for a test or exam, and 29% said they regularly do not manage to complete homework on time. Sadly, 37% of those that were asked told us that they felt like their caring situation means they haven't been able to achieve their full academic potential at school. And that's just really sad to hear. And obviously, it's not just their caring role. There are other factors that might play a part in why they can't reach their full academic potential at school. But their caring role definitely plays a part. So this is the final key finding that we are going to highlight from the report, and it's about awareness, identification and understanding of young carers. The quote says, "Some teachers realise I have more responsibilities and worries than my mates, but most don't seem to care, even if they know. One told me I had to stop using it as an excuse because I hadn't finished my homework. I was fuming." So only 58% of respondents of our school survey agreed that all staff in their setting had a good understanding of young carers and how to identify them. Our polling of 8,231 teachers found out that 28% of teachers said they did not know or were not sure if any of their pupils were young carers. When it came to the young carers themselves, only 26% of the survey respondents agreed that their teachers had had a good understanding of the challenges young carers face. So we know, we work with teenagers, we know that some of this might be that in their school they do have a really good young carer support, but they don't always realise it's because they're a young carer. They might have a young carer lead that talks to them every week, but they might not be aware it's because they're a young carer. So there is sometimes a little bit of that, of teenagers not quite realising what support they're getting and what's in place. But the majority of it will be true, that they don't feel like they have any support in school. And we know, even from the schools I work with, I know that there are some schools that are thriving with their young carer support and some that are just doing the bare minimum. So when thinking about the support schools can give, a lot comes down to capacity. So again, take that pen and paper. What is it like in your setting? What support do you have for young carers in your setting? Are you watching this because you want to start some support for young carers within your setting, or are you watching this as a refresher because you've been doing it for so long? So every school is different. So it's just have some time, think about what support you're currently offering young carers in your setting. There were 14 recommendations of this report, but as I said before, we're not going to go through them all, but we are going to look into two of the key ones. So two key recommendations were the introduction of a young carer pupil premium and increasing the role of that Ofsted plays in monitoring support for young carers in schools and colleges. There were four. So we'll start with the implementation of young carer specific pupil premium. So 93% of the respondents agreed that dedicated additional funding for education settings to support young carers is needed to improve their education opportunities. While the Department of Education guidance specifically states that schools could use existing pupil premium funding to support young carers, additional funding is vital given the financial pressures faced by schools. Research by Sutton Trust, which is another young carer charity, has shown that 47% of school leaders are using pupil premium funding to plug gaps elsewhere in the school's budget, up from 41% in 2023, and that's more than double the figure of 23% that was in 2019. The young carer pupil premium would enable schools to provide additional pastoral support. It would also provide academic support to mitigate specific challenges faced by young carers, such as not having a quiet space to study at home. Examples of this support could include monitoring of young carers' progress compared to the wider school population, paying the additional hours needed for staff members to become young carer champions or leads, or employing additional staff to provide small group, academic, or emotional support to young carers. So, what would be your thoughts on pupil premium for young carers? Why don't you jot it down on your notepad? So, now moving on to the recommendation that Ofsted plays more of a role in monitoring the support for young carers in schools and colleges. So up until 2019, Ofsted included young carers as a group of pupils, which an inspector would pay particular attention to the outcomes for. But since then, young carers have not been mentioned in the Ofsted Education Inspection Framework, which has been a real shame. So 87% of the 38 schools and colleges who responded to our survey also agreed that schools should be required to report to Ofsted on how they support their young carers. Young carer leads told us that if senior leadership in school knew Ofsted were likely to ask about young carers, this would increase the profile of young carer leads and their work within schools. And it is sad to think that it takes an inspection or some sort of monitoring to raise the awareness of young carers in school. But if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. And we really hope that this young carers report makes a difference and actually Ofsteds sit up and start taking notice of young carers. Because if they did, then maybe some of those other statistics we saw wouldn't be as bad and the gaps might close between young carers and other pupils. So that is the end of our report on the Young Carers report from Carers Trust. But again, if you'd like to see the full report and you'd like some light bedtime reading, then do go to the Carers Trust website and you'll be able to find it there. But yeah, so now I'm going to hand over to Tammy and she's going to talk to us about the updates for our high school award.
Hi. So hopefully most of you will be aware of our schools award, but for those who are not, it's something that we developed nearly 10 years ago as a way to raise awareness and increase support for our young carers within school. Just as a recap as to the purpose of the award, it's about reviewing and developing what support is in place for the young carers and YACs in your setting and how this is communicated to your school and college community as to what support those young carers and YACs can expect to be able to access. The bronze level is about setting the foundations, looking at what support is already in place and deciding what further support needs to be implemented. The silver is about how that support will be put in place, i.e. through the college website, Young Carers Action Day, Freshers Fairs, and staff bulletins and staff CPD to raise awareness. At the gold level, reviewing what has been done and what you are doing well and then platinum level is about sharing that good practice with other school leads or at network meetings that we host. So just as a way of providing an update, there's been a few key changes. So at bronze and silver, we now require all leads, all school or college leads to complete our e-learning, which is available on our website. We also there is also the change that all schools management systems now collect young carers and YAC status of pupils, which is used for annual census data and transition information. Also, young carer ambassadors are now introduced within your school settings if there is someone that you feel would be appropriate and make a good young carer ambassador, and they can work with the young carer lead to progress the schools award. The key differences at the gold and platinum level. At gold, young carer leads present at network meeting events to raise awareness and best practice in education support for young carers. And at platinum, we've now introduced the Platinum as a way for young carer leads and young carer ambassadors to share their good practice. So they at the Suffolk Family Carers Network meetings, and they can also meet and meet together in school and review the support alongside the school's award criteria and share feedback with us. That would be really helpful. And young carer leads can act as a mentor, as I said before, for newly appointed young carer leads at another education setting in Suffolk. Okay, I'm now going to talk through our Be Your Own Best Friend programme. We have designed our own wellbeing programme, Be Your Own Best Friend, which can be arranged. It can be arranged for us to come and deliver at your school setting upon request. The programme helps to build resilience in young carers and increase self-confidence and self-esteem, resulting in improved well-being and therefore having a positive impact on their attainment levels. The programme empowers young carers to explore their feelings and emotions and allows them to talk about their situation in a safe and accepting group environment. Attendees are encouraged to make small changes throughout the programme and identify at least 2 things they can do differently at the end to support their self-development and make a positive impact on their lives. This might be related to their self-care, for example, addressing negative self-talk or addressing the balance of time that they allow themselves. Or it could be to do with a relationship or some aspect of their social lives. As I say, it's been developed around building self-confidence and self-esteem. And yeah, what was I going to say? Sorry. And some feedback that we've had from young carers who have completed the course has said, this has helped me to be more confident and positive. I had fun and became more thoughtful towards myself. And then another feedback quote was, it's okay to do something for you once in a while. Okay, I mentioned when we talked about Schools Award, I mentioned Young Carers Ambassadors. So this initiative came from feedback from schools and carers who felt the role would help to ensure that young carer and young adult carer support became embedded and relevant to the needs of the young people at their school or college. So it's about it being needs-led, hearing directly from young carers as to what support they need. The role of the ambassador is to support the young carer or young adult carer lead in the school or college setting in maintaining that carer support, ensuring it is needs-led, representing carers at schools or college community engagement events, meeting annually with the governing body, representative to discuss their carer needs, work in partnership with the young carer or YAC lead as an initial point of contact for students. So the young carer or YAC ambassador would be guiding, not trying to resolve the problems, and linking their fellow student carers up with the young carer or YAC lead in their college. Also in partnership with the young carer or YAC lead, the young carer ambassador would review school or college webpage content and help gain feedback from carers for their school college requirements and for Suffolk Family Carer requirements.
Okay, that is the end of our presentation, and from myself and Tammy, I want to thank you for joining with us today and using this online resource. Do keep a lookout on our website for more resources for professionals, and we do network meetings in person as well, so do keep a lookout from that. If you'd like to give us some feedback, we'll happily take that. If you could send it to hello@suffolkfamilycarers.org, that would be great. And yeah, thanks again.